LinkedIn News.
Life is a tough game. It's the toughest game we're going to play. It's the hardest game, and we lose. We all lose in the end. Yet, if you were playing and going to the Olympics, you would not go there unprepared. You would have worked to really build up your strength and your ability and your flexibility to be prepared for the greatest challenge you're going to experience.
That's sociologist Corey Keyes. I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better. Stay tuned to hear more about the mental health hygiene practices that'll help you prepare for the tough game of life. Make sure you hit that follow button to get new episodes of our show every week. And this month, I really want to hear directly from you. So Everyday Better is kicking off an audience survey. It would mean the world to me if you'd fill it out and tell me what you love about the show, but also what you want more of, because getting your feedback is how my team and I are going to continue to grow and develop Everyday Better. There's a few ways to find this survey. The easiest is we've put a link in the show notes for today's episode. You can also find the link to the survey on my LinkedIn profile at the very top, or you can send me an email at everydaybetter@linkedin.com with survey in the title, and we'll send you the link. That's everydaybetter@linkedin.com with survey in the title. I can't wait to hear from you. Hey everyone, from LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better, a personal development podcast where every week I sit down with some of the world's brightest minds and bravest hearts who use science and story to share strategies for how we can flourish individually, in relationship to others, and to the world around us. Have you ever felt like on the surface everything was totally fine, but inside you were feeling just a little bit empty? And it wasn't necessarily depression or burnout, but everything felt kind of blah. Maybe for you it was being stuck in a mental fog for days or struggling to motivate yourself to do what you say matters most. Either way, this is a pretty normal experience. And my guest today, Corey Keyes, has a word for it: languishing. Now, you probably know that we love real and clear definitions on this show. So here's what languishing is. It's a state of mental weariness that over time erodes our self-esteem, motivation, and our sense of meaning and connection to others. Corey has dedicated his career to studying this very experience, and his research has shown that while languishing is a normal part of being human, it is not something we should ignore, because people who languish more are more likely to feel out of control in their lives, uncertain about their futures, and paralyzed when they're faced with decisions. And this is the slippery slope that leads toward things like depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. Now, the good news is that Corey's research not only illustrates why we languish, it highlights what we can do about it. Corey believes that good mental health isn't just the absence of mental illness. It is so much more. So just like brushing your teeth or washing your hands keeps you healthier, Corey wants us to pay more attention to our mental health hygiene, because doing so helps strengthen and protect us as we take on life's many challenges. Here's Corey.
I think for me, and I suspect this is true of many scholars, lived experience and personal experience is where it all started for me. And that's how I start my book. I heard a song that just became my anthem as a teenager, and it was Jackson Browne's Running on Empty. When I heard the lyrics, I thought, oh my God, he's describing me and what I'm feeling. And for the first time, I felt seen. I wanted to know if others experienced this the way I did, because it was painful, to tell you the truth. It was very painful. And I was driven to try to find a better way to approach mental health and illness.
So if we come back to languishing, tell me what it is, because you write about different examples in the book, but what does it look like to languish so that we can understand, oh, am I here? Is someone I know here? Have I ever been here before?
The way I describe it is that we all know about people's physically unhealthy behaviors and lifestyles, right? So if your diet, your exercise, and a variety of other things smoking, drinking, whatever it is you're engaging in. We call those physically unhealthy ways of living. And if you do that for long enough, Leah, what happens is that you become physically ill. You begin to develop illnesses. Languishing is the equivalent of physical unhealth. It's being mentally unhealthy. And if you stay there too long, you do end up becoming mentally ill. So when we're languishing, we lose a lot of those good things that make us feel like we're alive, such as you regularly feel that the things you do on a daily basis matters or contributes things of worth to the world. You regularly feel like you belong somewhere to what you would call a community. You have a sense of belonging. You regularly feel that your interpersonal relationships have warmth and trust. You regularly feel that you can make sense of what's going on in the world around you. We call that coherence. You regularly feel that your life has purpose or direction. So to languish isn't just to feel meh or empty. That's true. But what I'm really trying to carve out is something that nobody else paid attention to, which was the presence of good mental health. We still labor under this idea that somehow people are mentally healthy if they're free of mental disorder.
Right.
And they're not. The vast majority of the world is somewhere in between. They're mentally unhealthy.
I think a lot of us experience languishing, but we still are like going about our days and, kind of moving through the world. I don't necessarily know that languishing means we're not doing anything anymore. It means maybe we're doing things, but sort of it's like life is on mute or something is, like something is dulled.
Yes. We start to feel invisible or like ghosts. We're receding into the background. There are people who describe it, I'm in the room, but I don't really feel I'm there. And then people talk about this, they feel like they're dying inside. And on top of what you described is this emotionless world. You don't feel much of anything good, but you don't feel much of anything negative either. And that's why people feel like kind of lost.
What did you find causes languishing? Like, I know you mentioned genetics, but then there's all sorts of things. Like, where does it come from?
I would describe it as anything and everything we can think about that denies your sense of being seen, understood, accepted. And I write about racism and discrimination as one of those things that just hollows people out. I talk about demoralization, which is happening rampant in our public schools and our teachers, as well as to our doctors and nurses. There's new research showing that moral injury is happening all over the place. People are having to carry out things because they've been ordered or instructed to do by more powerful people to do things that go against their moral and ethical compass. All of those things take away from ourselves the sense of who we wanted to be and replaces it with a person that we don't recognize and never wanted to be.
Is this new?
No.
Or did we just not know how to talk about it?
We have not known at all to talk about it, but yet there's so many hints throughout history. I went back looking for it because anything I study, I don't want to sort of claim that somehow it's new. I want to look at how deep it goes. And I found it in the 8th deadly sin. I kid you not. There used to be 8 deadly sins. And that 8th deadly sin was called acedia. And people have read about it. They mistake it for depression. It's not at all the feeling of sadness. It's the feeling of longing for something that you lost that was good. And it's the feeling of emptiness. And it was a sin because it detracted people from their spiritual path in ancient Christianity and religious traditions. And yet there it is in ancient Greek mythology, in the origin story of medicine. It's the myth of Asclepius, the father of medicine. He had 2 daughters that were supposed to represent 2 distinct branches of medicine. One was Panacea. We know her well. That's what doctors do now. But what people don't realize is he also had a daughter named Hygiene. And in the ancient world, she represented health. And if you look at the staff of Asclepius, there's a snake winding its way around that. That's the symbol of Hygeia, because it regenerates. Every snake and every animal has a way of regenerating itself. In the case of the snake, it sheds its old skin.
Sheds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't it remarkable? She was always there.
But we've never known.
We've never paid attention to her. She was invisible to the world. And I tell that story because my work recognizes that whole neglected branch, which we've kept invisible, didn't think it was important, right? So it goes way back. And we have got to find a way to get people to pay more respect to this, because I think of it like athletes. Life is a tough game. It's the toughest game we're going to play. It's the hardest game, and we lose. We all lose in the end. We know it. Yet, if you were playing and going to the Olympics, you would not go there unprepared. You would have worked to really build up your strength and your ability and your flexibility to be prepared for the greatest challenge you're going to experience. Yet we treat life as though it's not anywhere close to that. And yes, it is. It is.
You know, the pieces that you're sharing around the research of how historical this is show us that it's happened before. People have languished before. Should we all assume that at some point in our lives we will be experiencing languishing and that it's okay?
Yes. Yes. It's a very normal reaction to when we experience circumstances and periods in our life, even if they don't sort of insult the integrity of our identity and what we care about. It's just some periods in our life we're so busy that we can't say no to work and other things, but we neglect the things that feed our soul. Now, here's the way I describe it, Leah. Every night we go to bed with great intentions. We set our alarm and we say, I'm going to listen to that alarm, and then I'm going to go do something that's really good for me. But a lot of the times, what do? We hit the snooze, right? Now, languishing is an alarm. It's an existential alarm that's going off saying, you have not said yes to the things that feed your soul and your spirit. And if we keep hitting snooze on that, depression risk goes up, anxiety risk goes up, even addiction is associated with it, alcoholism, right? I mean, we try to find other quick fixes for that emptiness. And I'm not perfect at this either. I admit in my book, I didn't always listen to that alarm either. I hit snooze. And I didn't connect with my loved ones when I needed. I isolated. We all do it. Hit that snooze button. You just keep doing the things that aren't you.
One of the things that you've said, and you said this earlier, and then you've also said this in your book, is that health is not just the absence of disease. It is also the presence of well-being. And the medical field has too often overlooked the possibility that you can learn to function well in life and even to flourish without completely curing anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, OCD, or other mental illnesses or disorders. I find this really interesting because, sometimes in like the pocket of personal development or, well-being that I work in, you hear a lot of people talking about how important it is to focus on everything that needs to be healed. And it's almost like that is the most important thing, and that's where we have to go. And so you can almost become, and this has happened for me, kind of a problem looking for a solution. Everything is like, it's like whack-a-mole, right? Like, okay, add it to the list of things to be worked on. And then this unconscious belief kind of comes up that like, well, until all those things are checked off the list and finished and done, and I can wash my hands and say I did all that, I can't then switch over to this other thing.
Yeah.
You say that that's not true.
Roughly 20% of the world in any given year has some, call it mental disorder. I'm one of those. I've slid over onto the side where I did fit the category of mental illness. And I also have PTSD. Now, I will never be free of PTSD or depression. It will always be there in the background, but it stays in the background when I'm working on my mental health. And if you keep focusing on belonging and contribution and acceptance and growth and all those good things, your risk of recurrence goes down dramatically as you move closer and closer to flourishing. But when you stop paying attention to all those good things or something takes that away from you, you start to languish. The data are very clear. Your risk of recurrence or relapse is very high. And I'll end here that this is so important. There's studies showing that cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapies are very good at lowering anxiety and depression and treating it. But for the vast majority of people with depression and anxiety, it doesn't promote positive mental health. It reduces the bad, but it can leave most patients languishing. And you got to be careful, both as a therapist and as a patient. When you say to somebody, okay, you're done with your therapy here, you need something else that's going to promote your good mental health so that you gain that strength and protection.
So, languishing is much more than just that blah feeling. It is also the absence of good mental health. Coming up, we'll hear from Corey about the key practices that we can use to strengthen our mental health hygiene. We'll be back in just a few moments. And we're back with Corey Keyes, author of the book Languishing: How to Feel Alive Again in a World That Wears Us Down. Now, before the break, we explored what it's like to languish. Well, the other half of Corey's research is about functioning well, or what he calls flourishing. Flourishing is all about those good mental health practices that we're lacking when we're languishing. It's about taking simple but powerful steps that strengthen us and help us create more meaning and connection in our lives. So what do we do to set ourselves on a path towards flourishing and functioning well? Corey is here to explain that.
To really get at languishing, you have to understand what flourishing is. That's where the second half of the book is entirely devoted to these 5 activities. And I came to think of them as the vitamins. They're like behavioral vitamins, the equivalent of feeding your body and your soul something that provides you with the strength. And these 5 activities were based on the studies that showed, even if you're depressed or languishing, if you do more of each of those 5 activities on a regular basis, you start to move out of those states and towards flourishing. You don't have to do all of these 5 that I'm going to talk about next, but when you choose one, do as much as that's humanly possible for you that day. So the first one, let's just start here, which is something we could do on our lunch break. Learn something new. Most of us encourage our kids to do this, and most of us as adults learn things, but we do them instrumentally. They're usually to do because we have to do them, or they're going to help us in our job and do our job better. I'm talking about something that's only because you want to do it and you want to work on it and see yourself getting better at it. When you're engaging in that kind of activity, you feel like you're alive because you're growing. And you want to keep working at it. Lots of people pick up instruments. They're not going to become musicians. Why do they keep working at it? Because they love to see themselves do well and become better at things. Human beings have this need to get better at things. That's the first vitamin. Get out there and choose something just because that's interesting and there's room for you to grow. The second is help something or someone in the world. Study after study just makes it very clear. When we get out of ourselves and our own needs and start serving others' needs and helping them, we light up. Third, engage in some form of transcendence. Now, this is those spiritual or religious activities. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to belong to a church or synagogue or mosque. You don't even have to be spiritual. But religion and spiritual practices prepare us to be better human beings so that we choose rather than react when things don't go our way. I describe it in my book as rehearsing. Just like any musician who's going to do a recital, which is going to be stressful and people are going to be watching you, you want to be prepared for that challenge and that adversity. When we're prepared to choose to be more compassionate, kind, to listen rather than lash out when things aren't going our way, we usually make things better, not worse. But that takes rehearsal, just like somebody who's getting ready for a real recital.
The transcendence, I was going to ask you about this, which is, do we have to be spiritual or religious? And the answer is no. What kinds of things constitute the rehearsal for that?
Well, meditation and yoga. For me, yoga was just a godsend. It wasn't just the poses, by the way. It was also studying the philosophy, because it's all the good things that we want other people to do for us. Kindness, compassion, respect, forgiveness. I mean, I could go on. All those things are encouraged, and you're supposed to rehearse them and think about them. So the meditation and the yoga is just like what I call base camp. It prepares you to summit. But the summit is you have to get yourself immersed in something ethical, thinking about what are better ways to behave. What's a better way for me to be in this world? Rather than complaining about everyone else and how they're behaving, how can I take responsibility for me and do better? And that gets me sort of to the fourth vitamin, which is connect. Spend time with people where you can and have warmth, trust, belonging, and you matter. And if you don't have them, start building those things up. So start by valuing and saying thank you to other people and say, wow, what you've just done for me really, really is a nice thing. I value what you're doing. You will not belong if you don't include and accept other people. You will not make a contribution if other people don't value what you do and you don't value what they do for you. You got to give to get. And then the last vitamin is play. It's very clear, leisure, but active leisure, not the passive kind. Getting out there and doing something physically, making something happen. Start telling stories rather than listening to everyone else's stories. Start playing sports rather than sitting on your couch and consuming sports. That's what our ancestors did for thousands upon thousands of years. They didn't have a radio, they didn't have a TV, they didn't have an iPad or iPhone. They created entertainment and engagement for each other. We've lost that sense that we can create the things that bring each other and ourselves joy. We do that when we play. We do that when we engage in active leisure.
And these five, which are really, I mean, I love how simple they are. And I mean, everything has something I can immediately go, okay, I could see how each of us could do one of these things. Are you saying that we should be doing each of these every day? We should pick one and go, okay, I'll try this one out for a while and see how it goes.
Well, most of us in our adult life can't do all five to the level you would need to do them in order to flourish. So the research was clear. People did one of those things and did it enough. Now, enough is, I don't know how much you have to do, but you have to, people who did more helping, did more learning in that day, who did more spirituality, did more play, right? That day, when they did one of those things more, they had a much better day. If they were depressed or if they were languishing, it was very clear. Now, what I would do is recommend, it's kind of like vitamins, pick help on Tuesday, spirituality on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You get to make it up, whatever you want.
Well, I think of it as like each of these things. I think enough is kind of an interesting one. I've also been thinking about this phrase, like doing things daily-ish, which I really like. But the enough to me feels like, oh, we all know, like if someone says, oh, you like to work out? How do you do it often? You know immediately if you're like, I don't do it enough or I totally do. You know what I mean? It's like, you almost don't need to be like, it was 5 days last week and it was 6 days the week before. You're like, oh, I didn't do it enough, in the last week and a half. Or, yeah, I'm really doing it.
I love that.
Like that feels like a good internal barometer.
Yes. I think we've gotten so used to listening to these recommendations, like 20 minutes, right? No,
Yeah.
Don't. That's not the way this works. You will feel it. When people are languishing, they describe it as a hunger. You will know when your spiritual tummy is full, when you've done enough helping, when you've done enough spirituality that day. Listen to you. I can't tell you what's enough for you.
This is really helpful, this idea of, yes, don't listen to everything else. Because I think we're all looking for a very specific, here's how to get these things done so you can get this result. And like the hope is that you get this result as quickly as humanly possible. And that it doesn't take a whole lot of struggle or suffering. And so if you don't get it right away, you're thinking something's wrong. And especially in the US, we have this attachment to happiness and to wanting to feel good. But then when we think about flourishing and doing these things, taking these vitamins, right? Can it take a while to feel really good?
Yes.
Can it take a while to go, I'm flourishing?
Mm-hmm. The world seems all hung up on this happiness stuff, that if you're happy, if you feel good, you're doing well. It's very clear in my research, and I write about this in the book, that's not enough. I learned a very valuable lesson when I came to understand this neuroscientist's work. His name was Antonio Damasio. He was very interested in what he called gut emotions, but feelings. Because what he found was that people who are cut off from their emotions don't make very good rational decisions. And here's what he found. Emotions are very good for reducing the amount of choice options. They limit down the number of things from which you have to choose, so that your rational brain can do a better job sorting from a few rather than 1,000 things to choose from. Feelings are great compasses. They point you kind of in a vague direction, but they're not going to get you to choose necessarily the most meaningful things for you, the most worthy things of your time, and the most useful places and things to use on your journey that's going to require a lot of effort. And so it's very clear, and I give you examples in the book of studies that show that, a lot of people do feel happy about a life, but they don't meet the criteria for flourishing when it comes to functioning well. And in the college students I was studying, that was almost 22%. They were happy, but they weren't functioning well. Here's what's remarkable. They had 5 times the rate of mental illness in the past 2 weeks that I had studied them compared to those who were flourishing. They were much more likely to be having problems academically than those who were flourishing. But they felt happy. The way I describe this so that people aren't confused is, think about our diet. A lot of stuff we can eat tastes good and feels good, but has very little nutritional value. It's not going to build up our strength and sustain us, but it'll make us feel good. That kind of happiness I just described is kind of like the version of junk food. We can feel good about a lot of things that don't add a lot of meaning and purpose and belonging to our lives. Anna Lemke wrote about this in her book, Dopamine Nation. We live in a world of abundance of things that light up our buttons for feeling good, but that's all such short-term stuff. It's like eating a diet that has very little nutrition. So what I'm recommending is focus on the functioning well, because somehow to me, it seems like a more sustainable kind of flourishing. Because when you've worked to develop your purpose, and you feel that most days, when you've worked to belong and contribute and accept others and grow, you have earned something. You've accomplished something worth pride.
I tried your the assignment that you give your kids about like going out and trying to do something that you really love and then seeing if you can stay happy, the rest of the day. And so Saturday I went out and I love to bike ride, and I love bike riding on the west side of Manhattan. So I was like, great, I'm going to go bike ride down the whole west side. And it was a beautiful day. And as I was kind of going along, I was like, I don't feel happy anymore. Even in the moment that I was doing the thing that I love, there were moments within that where I wasn't feeling happy. my mind was taking over. There were thoughts I was having, so I was contemplating something. And so this assignment kind of brings me back to the idea of like feeling good is a fleeting feeling.
Yeah.
Happiness is a fleeting feeling or an emotion that's not meant to last. And I'm thinking of like functioning well as sort of like a backbone or like a spine of finding a sense of flourishing.
Yeah. Well, I would, and to your listeners, and this is a question to you, think about the things that you've accomplished that you're really proud of. And I'm thinking about one myself. I still feel good when I remember something that I worked very hard to accomplish. And then I did it in a way that was dignified. I didn't do the shortcuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Human beings don't want to be given the gold medal. They want to earn it.
They want to work.
They want to work, and they want to earn it. We all want to earn our way. And we can do that experiment. I could give you everything you want. Would you take it? Some people would, but most people would say, God, no, really. I'd want.
Feels wrong.
Right? It feels wrong. It feels cheap. I don't feel like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you want to feel good about your life, look back at something you've accomplished. It took hard work that you're proud about, and you will know what functioning well does for you, because nobody can take that away. Only you can give that away.
You know, I used to think like, oh, happiness is the most important thing, like before I had started really doing the work I do now. And it's not that it doesn't matter or that pleasure doesn't matter, but to look at other people and think they were happy, right? Like as you describe this, sort of add some complexity and a layer to it that you go, well, wait a second. Maybe this isn't what I should be shooting for after all, but this sort of indirect approach to flourishing and to, you know, increasing my well-being or enhancing my well-being. And by the way, I have control over that in a different way. I have some autonomy over that in a different way than do I feel happy. There's a much more lasting sense of satisfaction when I'm considering learning something new or helping someone, or, you know, I do yoga and I also meditate, like when I really, you know, allow myself to do that enough, you know, that feels really good. And I'm curious from the research, but also from your own personal experience, because this is how this work started for you. Who do we become when we flourish as individuals? And I mean, gosh, if we could as a society, what changes for us?
Wow. There's the example of Scott that I write about. He's an Australian prison guard for a women's prison. His transformation, and when he began to flourish, I felt this myself. You can't keep it to yourself. You start giving away, right? I'm convinced that when you start flourishing, you start giving it away. You become a source, like for others. And that's what happened to Scott. And it changed the way he thought about the women and their lives and what they could do in prison and what his role was as a prison guard. It's just a fascinating transformation to see, because you can see people kind of like, they just come to life. You know it when you see it. People glow. You want to be around those kind of people. Not because they're great or they have medals or a lot of money, but because you're a better person in their company.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Corey, I'm going to have you complete these 3 statements for me as we wrap up. Normally I ask people, it's kind of like the ethos of our show, which is, you know, better humans are, better work is, and then a better world has. I want to change it because we're talking about flourishing. So I'm going to ask you this instead. Flourishing humans are
better people for the world and each other.
Flourishing work is
when people feel that what they do matters to others in the world.
And a world that is flourishing has.
I would say a flourishing world is one where we can acknowledge and pay tribute to each other's suffering, but help each other work towards what I would call flourishing or good mental health.
I love it. Thank you so much, Corey. This was great. I learned a lot. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
That was sociologist Corey Keyes, author of the book Languishing: How to Feel Alive Again in a World That Wears Us Down. If this conversation resonated with you, text it to the first person who comes to mind. You never know how it could help them out. And support other people like you in finding our show by leaving us a rating before you go. While you're at it, write a one-sentence review telling me and the team what you love about Everyday Better. And as always, you can get me in your inbox by signing up for my weekly personal development newsletter, giving you practical tips on how to level up with small steps every day. Find it in our show notes for this episode, or you can go to linkedin.com/everydaybetter and hit subscribe. That's linkedin.com/everydaybetter and hit subscribe. Everyday Better is a production of LinkedIn News. The show is produced by Grace Rubin and Emily Reeves. Asaf Gadron is our sound engineer. He makes sure we sound good in the studio. Tim Boland mixed our show. Enrique Montalvo is the executive producer of LinkedIn Editorial Productions. Dave Pond is head of news production. Courtney Koop is head of LinkedIn Original Audio and Video. Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. And I'm Leah Smart. Thanks for coming with me, and I'll see you next week.